Hi, everybody. This is Mr. K on Sports. My name is Mike Koschak, and this is my first episode of what I hope will be many as I talk about sports, particularly baseball and football, and as you can see, with a bit of a Pittsburgh flavor. So my first episode is going to focus on the Pittsburgh Steelers, the state of the Pittsburgh Steelers as we near the NFL draft. We're 2 nights away. The draft will begin on Thursday, April 23rd. It'll be very different this year due to the coronavirus. The NFL will have to adapt and practice social distancing, and really every team will have to perfect Zoom chatting and remote drafting. So that should be interesting. Time will tell if it creates any kind of different factors that are unforeseen in the draft. But I'd like to focus on the Steelers roster tonight and really on the depth chart and try to project where they may look to spend their draft choices Thursday night. So we'll start at the quarterback position. Big Ben Roethlisberger appears to be on course to come back from his injury where he missed most of last season. The Steelers are optimistic that he will. All signs indicate that he will. If that occurs, that will be a big breath of fresh air for the Steeler offense, certainly. Now, the backup quarterback right now on the depth chart is Mason Rudolph. The Steelers are comfortable with that. Most fans probably are not after last year. I believe that the Steelers are correct. I like Mason Rudolph a lot. I was very high on him coming out of Oklahoma State a couple years ago. I think that mentally he was greatly affected by the melee in Cleveland with Myles Garrett. I think that when he did re-enter the lineup late in the season against the Jets, he was playing well, and then he got injured. So I see him as a definite quarterback of the future, solid number 2 this year, and the primary reason that I do not think the Steelers will draft a quarterback in this coming draft. Duck Hodges is right now in the 3 slot. Duck came in last year when Mason had some issues and provided a spark early, but kind of fizzled late. I believe he's limited in what he can do. And then they have 2 other arms that are interesting in camp. Paxton Lynch was picked up at the end of last season. This guy's a former number 1 draft choice of the Denver Broncos. He will get a look in camp, as will J.T. Barrett, the former Ohio State quarterback who had a great career at Ohio State. So they are stocked with arms for training camp in Latrobe in August. And I really do not think they will spend draft capital on a quarterback. Now, others disagree. And I have seen some reports of the Steelers even being projected in the 2nd round with their first pick of this draft to take Jalen Hurts, the quarterback from Oklahoma. I do not see that happening. I believe they'll stand pat with the quarterbacks they have, with everything really riding on Big Ben's health. Now, at running back, it's a different story. I think they're going to definitely spend a draft choice on a running back, and I think it may even be a high running back. The Steelers' philosophy has always been to draft the best available player, and I believe they'll stick with that. I believe that because they filled some holes in free agency, they can do that. And I believe that's really the way to draft. When you start trying to just primarily fill needs in order, you can run into problems with the draft and select some busts. So at running back, atop the depth chart right now is James Conner. Conner is an excellent running back when healthy. He has a reckless style, though, which leads him to injury, and that occurred last year. He is a 3-down back when healthy, but I think the Steelers are a little concerned about his injuries. Behind him is Benny Snell. He was a rookie out of Kentucky last year. He showed to be a good power back. He had some good games. He's a little limited in pass protection. He'll need to grow in that area. Jalen Samuels is 3rd, and Samuels is an excellent receiver. He has shown some flashes. He's had some very good games. Whether he's a 3-down answer, I don't think so, and the Steelers probably don't as well. There are some other bodies on the depth chart as the Steelers are looking at. Trey Edmonds has been a guy that's been around. It's Terrell's brother. He's a core special teams player. Kareth White performed last year in some spots, had some nice runs. He'll be back to take a look. He'll get a full camp with the Steelers this year. And then Darren Hall, the Pitt product, and Ralph Webb round out the depth chart at running back. But I definitely think the Steelers are going to look in that direction to add someone who might be able to become a 3-down back on their team. At fullback, they added Derek Watt in free agency from the Los Angeles Chargers. Watt, of course, the brother of TJ, and has really been what would look like a great fit for the Steelers. He's the only fullback on the roster. I look for him to be a core special teams player and play a significant amount on offense too. I'm hoping the Steelers will run some more fullback in their offense this year and really try to establish the running game. And Watt may even be used as a receiver out of the backfield. So I look forward to that. Now, wide receiver is another area where I think the Steelers may look to add a playmaker, particularly a fourth wideout. I think the top three are pretty solid right now. Of course, Juju Smith-Schuster was injured last year, didn't have as strong a season due to the injuries. The Steelers will look for him to bounce back and be their number one. James Washington showed strides last year, much improved, and so far all word is that he's had a great offseason and is in tip-top shape working on his farm. He, I think, is entrenched as a number two right now, along with Deontay Johnson, who had an excellent rookie season. The youngster out of Toledo flashed some big playability, also a good punt returner. So I think that top three is pretty solid. After that, it gets iffy. Ryan Switzer will be back. He's a kick returner as well. He was injured at the end of last year. He'll have to fight for a roster spot. Deion Kane showed some flashes last year. He was brought on toward the end of the year. He'll get a look in camp. He's a taller receiver. Some of the other names on here are less recognizable. Quadri Henderson, though, is a Pitt grad who's always been a good athlete, so he'll get a look. Saeed Blackwell out of Penn State was signed out of the XFL. He's always had talent. He'll get a look as well. Then Jamal Custis, Amara Darboh, and Anthony Johnson all provide a little bit different types as far as receivers. They'll have an outside shot to make the team as wideouts in camp, but they'll get a look in Latrobe. At the tight end spot, the Steelers really addressed this in free agency by signing Eric Ebron. Ebron, they're hoping, will be a big play receiver. He may even be the guy that uses a fourth receiver and split out. He's a much better receiver than blocker, but he'll be really relied upon, I think, to add some spark to the offense. Vance McDonald will be back. Had a down year last year. He'll look to bounce back. I look for the Steelers to run more two tight end formations this year, which really could put defenses in a tough spot. Zach Gentry is right now the third tight end. He was a rookie last year out of Michigan. Gentry's a pretty decent blocker, needs to work on his receiving. He's inexperienced at tight end. He came to Michigan as a quarterback. He's got some potential, and he's got a chance to carve out a niche in camp. The other names are a couple of guys that have been around a couple of years as prospects. They remain prospects. Kevin Rader and Christian Scotland Williamson. They'll be fighting for jobs in camp as well. Now, the offensive line is definitely an area I see the Steelers spending at least one draft choice on. They are very light on the depth chart at center and guard. Of course, the starting center is Marquise Pouncey. He's the perennial All-Pro. The only names behind him now are a couple of unrecognizables. J.C. Hassenauer and John Kenoy. Those two will be getting their first look in camp. We'll see what happens. At guard, they're also light. They have David DeCastro, who again is another perennial All-Pro, and they signed Stefan Wisniewski, the Penn State product, who played for the Chiefs last year and won a Super Bowl. Wisniewski is thrilled to be back in Pennsylvania. He's a solid player. Whether he starts or not will depend on how he looks and how the tackles look, because there is a possibility for maybe a tackle to swing over to guard. There are a lot more tackles on the rosters than centers or guards. Alejandro Villanueva is the starting left tackle. A little down last year from his prior experience, not quite up to the All-Pro season that he's had in the past. He'll look to bounce back. The other tackle, Matt Filer, had a solid year at right tackle. He's a guy, though, that could move and slide into guard if the Steelers decide that they want to do that. I think they would really want to get their best 5 players on the field. So it really will shake out at camp who those 5 will be. Zach Banner is a guy who will look to increase his playing time. He became kind of a cult hero with fans last year, as his name was announced quite often as an extra tight end in short yardage and goal line situations. He'll try to play more this year and earn that. Chuks Okorafor is a guy that the Steelers have been high on, and if he can stay healthy, he's a real threat to try to start at tackle, which could push one of these tackles to guard. He's looked really good in the offseason. The other names that round out the depth chart, Derwin Gray, Christian DeLauro, and Anthony Coyle, they'll, again, all get a look in camp, but I definitely look for the Steelers to add offensive line depth in the draft, particularly at the inside positions, center and guard. Now let's switch over to defense. The defensive line. Javon Hargraves was lost in free agency, and they may have found a replacement by making a trade with the Baltimore Ravens for Chris Wormley. Wormley can play inside at nose tackle. He can play outside at defensive end. It's a little less important now to get 3 or 4 defensive linemen on the field at once with all the passing in the NFL and with all the sub packages, and the Steelers do rotate their linemen quite a bit. 2 guys that really shouldn't come off the field very often are Cameron Hayward and Stephon Tuitt. Hayward is Mr. Steady, had an all-pro year last year. As long as he stays healthy, we'll expect more of the same. Stephon Tuitt could be that same player if he can stay healthy. He's had some injury problems, missed most of last year. They'll need him to bounce back and stay on the field. Tyson Alualu is a veteran who played a lot more last year than he probably expected and did a solid job. He'll be back to provide depth. Daniel McCullers is a guy who seems like every year we say he's got to fight to make the roster. He's a mammoth guy. He's never quite lived up to what the Steelers hoped he would be. He, again, will be fighting for a job in camp. Isaiah Buggs is a young player, has been around a couple years now. It's a big make-or-break season for him. And then some other unknowns that will round out the roster, Henry Mando, Dwayne Hendricks, and Kevon Walker is a guy to keep an eye on. He's an XFL signee. He had some big plays in the XFL. He has a chance to earn some playing time with a good camp showing. Now at linebacker, this is another area I think the Steelers could use depth. They have solid starting players, but through free agency, they've lost some depth. Outside linebacker, Bud Dupree was signed to come back for next year. He'll team with TJ Watt to be a dynamic outside duo. They can rush, they can cover, and they are excellent players that the Steelers really wanted to keep together. But behind those two, there's 2 interesting players. Ola Adeniyi is a guy who has shown flashes but has had some injury problems. And Kuzar Skipper had an excellent camp last year. Both of those guys could develop as good depth options on the outside, but that's it. So I look for them probably to add a draft choice here. On the inside, Devin Bush had an excellent rookie year. He really showed that it was worth trading up last year in the first round to get him out of Michigan. And Vince Williams is his running mate on the inside, a good inside thumper, solid player, and team leader. Those are real 2 solid inside backers. However, behind them, inexperience. Ulysses Gilbert has showed some flashes out of Akron. He'll have a chance to carve out a niche as a depth inside linebacker and special teamer. And Robert Spillane is the other name there. So as you can see, there is depth problems at linebacker. I look for the Steelers to address that in the draft. Now on the defensive backs, the Steelers, I think, are in a better spot than they've been in many years. Their starting corners, Joe Hayden and Steven Nelson, are solid veterans, had excellent seasons last year. The Steelers will look for them to do more of the same. Their slot corner deluxe, Mike Hilton, is back. He specializes in the blitz from the slot position. And Cam Sutton is also back. He's more the cover slot corner. So they have a nice blend of skills at those 4 corner spots. That's a strength. Behind them also is Justin Lane, who was a 3rd-round choice out of Michigan State last year. Got increased time on special teams. He'll look to get on the field more on the defense, too. Alexander Myers and Breon Borders are 2 guys that are providing depth. And Arian Springs is kind of a swing guy between corner and safety. So there are a lot of bodies at corner for the Steelers. Same can be said at safety, though. Minkah Fitzpatrick was traded to the Steelers from Miami last year. Basically the Steelers' #1 draft choice this year. They gave Miami that draft choice. He was well worth it. He was an all-pro free safety. They've solved their problems at free safety for many years with him. Terrell Edmonds is coming around as the strong safety, and they're very solid at the starting positions. There are going to be some battles, I think, for depth at safety, though. Jordan Dangerfield is the 3rd guy right now. He's primarily a special teamer. He's played fairly well when called upon. Marcus Allen, the Penn Stater, I think this is a big camp for him. He's kind of a box safety that could earn his way on the field in some packages if he has a good camp. Tyree Cannell, John Battle, Trey Matthews are the other guys that round out the depth chart there. So I think defensive back-wise, there's a lot of bodies and there's a lot of depth, not an area of need for the Steelers. Now, specialty-wise, I think they're also pretty set. Chris Boswell had a great bounce-back season last year, became the consistent kicker that the Steelers have known him to be. Other than his off year 2 years ago, he's entrenched as our place kicker. Jordan Berry, as a punter, I think also is pretty safe. His year wasn't as consistent as Steeler fans would like, but I think if you look at the statistics, it was not bad at all. So he's a pretty solid punter. And then Cameron Canaday is an excellent long snapper. If you don't know his name, that's a good thing because most of the time, if long snappers are doing their job, they're like offensive linemen. You don't really know their names if they're doing their job. Behind him is Christian Kuntz, who's also listed as a linebacker. He's just another body in camp to provide some long snapping, but I think the three Steelers specialists are pretty safe with their jobs. So what I'm really looking at for the Steelers to do in the draft, I'm looking at probably a playmaking running back, playmaking wide receiver, offensive line depth, linebacker depth. I think those are the four areas they'll concentrate on. They don't have many draft picks this year, and they don't have a number one. So that's what I'm looking at as far as the state of the Steelers going into the draft in 2 nights. It'll be interesting to see. And I'm going to sign off now. Hope to talk to you again soon. This is Mr. K on Sports.